my stuff is all open for anybody to take and reuse. I don't really care.
Hmm. Okay, sounds fantastic, man. But it'll be recorded on my YouTube and Facebook. But yeah, I guess people are seeing us live already, so I guess we might as well start. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah. I should probably pull up the chat to
yeah,
make sure everything is working. I always like to do that to make sure is question mark sound question mark, because there's always been that few in which case the sound wasn't recorded and it just was so bad. Especially when it happens during the most important ones, that's the worst.
sheesh,
Yeah. Sounds Travis Statham says it works. Good. So,
works. Cool.
Israel, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate you taking the time to have a conversation with me. Would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Sure. My name is Israel Trujillo, and I've been getting into apologetics for about 6 years. I've been considered agnosticism for a little bit of time, but due to some of the works of many Christian scholars, I ended up deciding to that the Christian position was much better than the agnostic atheist position or agnostic position or atheist position, anything non Christian pretty much. And but yeah, pretty much that'll be much it. But I've been debating for a while. Mormons, Catholics, atheists, even free market capitalism, some of worldview issues on ethics, politics, and stuff. But yeah, pretty much all. Um, Politics and religion are pretty much my go-to. But yeah, you guys can find me in the Wisdom Media, in YouTube and on Facebook. You guys can follow us, and we're going to be live streaming there too. So, Tom, thank you so much for inviting me, man. It's a real pleasure to share this time with you and having this nice conversation, Tom. Appreciate it.
Cool. So I am an atheist, by which I mean I believe that naturalism best explains everything about the universe, every fact that we know of. Could you tell me some of the reasons you are atheist? And you mentioned that you were convinced by certain apologists. Could you name them? Tell us who were the ones that convinced you as well.
Well, are we gonna have the opening statement?
Yeah, that's this part.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I might as well just do my presentation, man. Yeah, I guess.
What Nathan Sanders says, I'm jealous of this guy's facial hair.
It's not even good,
Yeah,
man.
and
It's pretty much
Travis too. Travis says, cool background. I agree. Like you do have the
it's
best background.
Photoshop, actually. um, Yeah, I'll go ahead and do my presentation, man, and we can time it a little bit, 6:05. So we're gonna do like 10 minutes. All right. So the first part of my presentation is let's start with the truth of Christianity, which is based on a historical basis. So I'll first present what is called the minimal facts case of Dr. Gary Habermas for sake of brevity, we're just going to do the four facts case, which includes the first fact, which is Jesus' death by crucifixion. The second fact is the empty tomb. The third fact is the postmortem appearances, and the fourth fact is the spread of Christianity. So what is interesting about the minimal
Wait, what were
facts
the?
case
Could you?
of
I missed one of them. The first was death, empty tomb, spread, and what was the fourth one?
Yeah, so the death of Jesus by crucifixion, empty tomb, postmortem appearances, and spread of Christianity.
Got it.
And so, what is interesting about this is that the way Gary Habermas made his case, he pretty much made a collection of facts that even the most skeptic scholars on history that they would agree with. So these are pretty widely accepted facts. You only got like pretty small minorities that do not accept these facts. But okay, so the second part of my presentation will be the syllogism about the impossibility of atheism, explaining the laws of logic. So I will present the syllogism with the premise one being the laws of logic must be explained by either God or non-God explanations. Um,
Sorry, just we keep getting like an Apple noise, like a
yeah,
message.
I'm getting messages, man. I guess I should probably close Facebook, man. Just gonna close it. Okay, sorry about that. So the first premise is the laws of logic must be explained by either God or non-God explanations. Um, The premise two, the laws of logic cannot be explained by non-God explanations. Premise three, the laws of logic can be explained by God. Conclusion, we must believe in God. So what is interesting about these syllogistic form is that if you analyze the first premise, you kind of get a form of the law of excluded. No, a law of identity, which it can either it either has to be A or non-A. It cannot be anything else. So it's either the laws of logic must be explained by either God or non-God explanation. So I would say that, Tom, you would have a burden of proof to present a model or present an explanation for the laws of logic. And lastly, it shows Christianity over atheism because of its results in Western societies, results in previously poor and hopeless societies, families, pretty much the family structure, how Christianity helps with families, like people that have someone that has a lot of problems with either lust, cheating, hitting their wife, alcoholism, and a lot of those problems. So you see when there's changes from someone from being non-Christian to being Christian, you see that Christianity has results in all of these areas, including families. It also has results when it comes to inmates. There's a lot of jails that they let Christianity in jails because it allows them to have a lesser crime rate. So some of the jails have had some pretty big results in the sense that some of them went from being the most dangerous jails to being some of them the safest ones. You also have you also have results when it comes to criminals and evildoers, people just restraining from their evils. Basically people pretty much reforming from being homeless, from being drug addicts, and also the results of Christianity in the sense of getting the family system right. And also we pretty much gained the intellectual minds of the early era of Christianity over Greek philosophers, in the sense of how Constantine and Bishop of Ambrose, how they were some of the most intellectual guys in their area, and they didn't find Greek philosophy convincing. But as these people were some of the most rigorous people of their time, they did find Christianity intellectually rigorous compared to the Greek philosophies. We also see the benefits of Christianity being giving people reason to live, hope, spreads. Christianity spreads to martyrdom, and the act of Jesus on the cross, I would say that it is the biggest act of love in human history, which that pretty much helps a lot with the hearts of unbelievers and the hearts of people of other religions in Islamic countries, and also in South Korea as it transformed from a communist society to a capitalistic Christian society, at least culturally, and yeah, pretty much having a pretty good results in having a solid intellectual standpoint that can answer the big questions of life, in the sense of for so many hundreds of years. And I guess that's my case, Tom. So if you want to make your case, that'll be cool.
Sure, yeah, my case is pretty simple. I think that everything is best explained by naturalism. I think that every single fact that exists is better explained by a naturalist hypothesis than by a theistic hypothesis. I think that theism starts with its conclusion and tries to make the evidence fit, whereas a good hypothesis starts with the evidence and sees where it follows it wherever it leads, and it seems to always lead to naturalism. That's essentially the end of my case. There's not really much else to it.
Cool, pretty simple. So okay, so from a case, what do you want to do a rebuttal about?
Yeah, let's just start with the last one. You said that Christianity has lots of social benefits. How is that not an appeal to consequence fallacy?
Well, if you remember the first part of that case, it's about the results of Christianity. So, if Christianity is true, you expect to see a lot of results in different areas, and I went ahead and explained the different areas in which Christianity has had a pretty solid results, and that atheistic um, models cannot just do the same quality of results as Christian values when applied.
So like if there is the marijuana god, and if the marijuana god is real, then we would expect that when people take marijuana, they get a very positive emotional response. They do. Is that evidence of the marijuana god?
No, of course not. That's why I presented a logical case that very much the impossibility of the country of atheism explaining the laws of logic. That's why I present that logical case, and I'm pretty much arguing that you cannot build a model in a atheistic perspective that it can explain the laws of logic. And I also presented a historical case.
Well,
On
that was your second argument. So I just want to. I'm starting with just your third argument and going backwards. So your third argument seems to be just an appeal to consequence. Christianity has positive consequences. Therefore, this is evidence of Christianity being true.
oh no,
All
that's oh sorry. Go ahead.
So yeah, so I think that all of the positive consequences we see from Christianity are literally no different from any other psychological group activity that we can see. Playing football has positive consequences, the exact same as Christianity. Hare Krishna has positive consequences. Buddhism has positive consequences. We don't count that as being true for any of them because all of the positive aspects that we see a result of are a result of social norms and social interaction that we see in any social kinds of situations. Also, all the positive aspects are superseded by mostly secular countries. So if you look at all the positive ways in which Christianity has benefited the prisoners, for example, I mean, atheists make up the least percentage of prisoners of any religious group. So obviously, adopting the atheist worldview wouldn't make much sense there because it's such a small percent of the people in the prisons. But all the major secular countries have less infidelity, less crime, less violence, less of everything. So it seems like if we're counting the consequence of the ideology as being evidence of its truth, that would actually count more in favor of atheism than Christianity.
I think there's a huge misunderstanding on why I present the results case. So the reason is because, as the name of the debate says, it's Christianity, theism versus atheism. Which one is better? So on the case, that is why it's a three-part case. The first two parts are on establishing the truth of Christianity, and the third part is not about establishing the truth of Christianity. I'm not saying now there's good results, therefore it's true. That is not what I'm saying. I'm saying that those are great reasons to be a Christian rather than being an atheist. And so as a rebuttal to what you just mentioned on atheistic societies, well, when it comes to Japan, for example, Japan started having a great society after the World War by pretty much undefeating the Nazi regime, which was composed of Stalin, no, I'm sorry, Mussolini, Hitler, and Japan. Well, so Germany, Japan, and Italy, and so pretty much what I'm saying is that after Japan was defeated by the Judeo-Christian countries, it started adopting some of its culture, and it started becoming a successful society, not just.
I'm not quite following your argument here. So cherry picking specific atheistic or non-religious countries that didn't work doesn't change the fact that the majority of most successful countries today are majority non-religious. So if we're looking at overall the cumulative case here, mostly atheist countries are the ones who do the best by a significant margin today. The fact that some atheist countries did not do well doesn't change that fact. And we can do the same thing with Christianity and say, like, there are Christian countries in Africa who do really, really badly, and America does really, really badly in lots of aspects. Attributing that to Christianity, even if it worked, would, using the same structure of the argument, would be more evidence in the favor of atheism because the most successful countries are all predominantly secular.
Yeah, that some of the very successful countries right now, which are Japan and other countries, um, you can see a lot of secularism there. But what I'm trying to argue is that the origins of those countries is they started with a Judeo-Christian system, and pretty much throughout history they started getting rid of the getting rid of God, pretty much. So I'm arguing that those civilizations can have developed to their moral systems that they have right now if it wasn't for the influence of Judeo-Christian values. So
Well, that's
Judeo-Christian
like
values, and then they left pretty much God after.
well, it sounds like a genetic fallacy saying, well, it came from them, therefore they're attributed to the success. Clearly, that's not the case. Like rockets and helicopters were invented by Nazis. That doesn't mean Nazis are the ones who get all of the credit for rockets and helicopters. The fact that it started from a specific ideology doesn't mean that that ideology has anything to do with its success because of evolution. We can start with something and then say, oh, this doesn't work. We're going to replace it with something better. And that's how you get most of these atheist societies. We say, oh, that's bad. Here's something better. So the genetic fallacy of saying, well, it came from Christianity, therefore Christianity is still responsible for its success is well, that's actually wrong. Like if that was the case, then we would expect to see the currently Christian countries doing better than the atheist countries, which is not what we see. What we see is the majority of atheist countries, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, the like European countries, they do significantly better by replacing Christianity as an inferior ideology with a superior ideology, which does them better socially. So if your argument is that we should adopt Christianity because it has better consequences, well, the fact of the matter is that the atheist countries actually have the better consequences, the majority of them. And so using your own argument, that would be evidence to adopt atheism. Now, I don't, obviously, like you said, this wasn't an argument for truth here, so it doesn't make much of a difference to the truth of the claim. But if you're saying that because it produces a better social results, well, the one that produces better social results in pretty much every case are the secular countries.
I have a lot of problems with what you just shared. So, it is non-controversial actually that Western society has actually had a huge impact on every single one of the successful societies that we
You mean
have.
Christianity had a huge impact on them?
When it comes to Western societies are based on Judeo-Christian values. So it's Judaism, Christianity, and also from Athens.
And how is that
Philosophy.
not a genetic fallacy? How is that? What's the difference there between that and a genetic fallacy?
What are you claiming as a genetic fallacy?
To say that something's origin is responsible for the current modern context is a genetic fallacy. So my response was that the fact that it started with Christianity does not mean that its current success is due to Christianity. The whole point of those secular societies was to say Christianity's bad, we're going to replace it with something better, which is why they're doing better than currently Christian nations.
You cannot argue for a genetic fallacy. You could argue for a sloppy slope because I didn't provide much more support of that. But one of the things that I want to share for support of that position, it's how, for example, capitalism has been a primary contributor to the betterment of those societies, including in those Nordic countries and those atheistic societies. So, as capitalism was developed in large part to biblical principles, as you get, for example, that for example, in the Bible, you cannot be you're pretty much you have to how do you call it? Respect. Oh crap, I'm blanking out a little bit. um, well, yeah, it presupposes capitalism as a oh crap.
Well, let me just pause there for a moment. So a genetic fallacy is also known as the fallacy of origins or fallacy of virtue. Is a fallacy of irrelevance that is based solely on someone's or something's history, origin, or source rather than the current meaning or context. So the whole point here is that it doesn't make a difference. Even if you argue capitalism was designed around Christianity, which it wasn't, capitalism predates Christianity by a significantly several thousand years. But even if that was true, that would still be a genetic fallacy. The origin of something is irrelevant to the current context. So even if the origin was Christianity, the reason it's so successful isn't Christianity. The reason the secular societies are so successful is because they said Christianity is bad. here is something better. And then they adopted these better principles to replace Christianity, which is why they are getting a lead on top of all the Christian nations. They are doing better than the Christian nations because they rejected that ideology and adopted a better one.
No, I would say that phenomenon is actually developed as you see a lot of Christianity in usually countries that are struggling a lot financially, struggling a lot with violence, with yeah, pretty much with a lot of societal problems. So you see that Christianity thrives in countries where there's a lot of prosecution, there's a lot of those problems. So we see a pattern throughout history that once those Judeo-Christian societies start having success, usually when there's success, you don't have much of a reason to pray God anymore because you don't have much problems. So people start forgetting about God
What? I did not. I didn't.
once they start thriving through those Judeo-Christian values in those
I wasn't
societies.
not really following. So I think you're saying that once people leave Christianity, societies get worse. Is that the argument you're making?
No,
What's
no, that's no. I'm arguing that that societies get better with Judeo-Christian values, but then they take those Judeo-Christian values and they pretty much just throw God out of the picture.
right? But I don't see how that's relevant. So, for example, if you have a society of cannibals and you adopt Christianity to say, okay, cannibalism bad. Okay, so they've now improved. So they've improved from cannibalism to non-cannibalism. And then you could say, okay, so this Christian worldview that has all this stuff about burning witches and stoning people to death for working on a Sunday, that's bad too. We're going to get rid of that stuff. And then they get an even better society. You can't say the reason they have the better society is because Christianity. They specifically rejected Christianity, just like adopting Christianity causes you to reject cannibalism. So your same argument would be used to say that cannibalism is really the successor for all of these. Cannibalism is really the reason that everyone is doing so good because it was better than non-cannibalism. The fact that Christianity could be an improvement to certain societies doesn't mean it's the best improvement. It would still be replaced. It can still be replaced by something better. And that improvement wouldn't be attributed to Christianity. It would be attributed to the new ideology that replaced Christianity, wouldn't it?
No, what I'm trying to argue here is that even in well, as I mentioned before in my case, you got Christianity helping families, inmates, criminal evildoers, criminal homeless, drug addicts, and you don't see any atheistic system doing any of that. So
Doing what? Helping the poor?
pretty much having the same results with all of those with all of those societal problems. So you're gonna have stats as having Christians doing I think three or four times more charity than atheists. But of course,
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. I definitely agree with that. But atheists have a different solution, which is the welfare state, which is a significantly better solution that has had more of an impact on curing all of the social ills than any amount of charity. Charity doesn't work at all by comparison to social welfare. And in the atheist countries, as a society, we see it as a responsibility for the government to provide these things, which is why we don't give charity, because it's supposed to be something the government provides. And so the atheist societies and values actually have a better solution than charity in this case, not a worse solution. So again, that example you provided would actually be a reason to adopt atheism.
No, when it comes to welfare, actually, it's pretty horrible to lend welfare to the government, as you need if you have a broken system and you're just feeding money to a bottomless pit, that is not getting any improvement. So welfare by the government just cannot thrive. You see in Nordic countries, for example, that they're thriving based on their capitalistic economy, but you pretty much you're not taxing the rich in order to fund any of those like free healthcare stuff, and it's not even free. It's been funded by yeah, pretty much by citizens. So the way that free market capitalism pretty much helps will help the health sector as well as the economic sector would be in the sense that when you have a competitive economy, competitive in the sense of equipment, competitive in the sense of prices, in insurance, you pretty much start lowering down the price in every single sector to the point that healthcare becomes so cheap that it is not even in the question to try to make it free. Well, it's not even free, but to make the government pay for it based on taxpayer money.
Yes,
And
but if we
one
look, if you look at
one of
the
the things that I would like to add will be that when you mentioned the morality before, saying that you got better systems of morality in atheistic societies, the syllogism I presented on the second part of my case in the premise one, which is the loss of logic must be explained by either God or non-God explanations, it also applies for morality. So morality, in order to have an objective ground, it has to be explained by either God or non-God explanations. And as I've seen you and many other atheists admitted before, you cannot pretty much have an objective system of morality
well,
in
that's a different argument. So again,
non-God
I want to go
explanation.
one argument at a time.
How can you argue? How can you argue that atheism is better if you cannot have an objective standard for morality? Which
You
is the
can, like vast, you can.
convention.
There's absolutely no problem with having an objective standard of morality without a God. Most philosophers are atheists. Most philosophers believe in objective morality. No one thinks it's not a common view in philosophy that you can't have an objective basis without a God. It's just kind of silly. Most objective models of morality started without a God. Platonic objects was an objective moral model without a God. It's super simple to have an objective morality without a God. It's the consensus in academia. But again, I want to stick with one argument at a time here. Your argument that the fact that Christianity produces more values is just false. It is false in every measurable respect. Every secular society has less poor people, less poverty, less people with bad health, better economics, better in every single measurable respect because they're secular. The secular outcomes of the society are superior to the Christian outcomes. So if you want to make that argument, that's an argument for atheism. If you want me to address the moral thing is that to answer morality, what you do is you start with the moral phenomenon, which is our feelings, like when we feel when someone punches a baby that's immoral. And then we try to describe all of the different things we feel about morality and create a pattern for what describes the moral principles. And then once we have the moral principles, then we try to infer what the grounds of morality is. That's a correct way to assess what morality is. Whereas the theistic model goes about it backwards. It just starts with their conclusion, God is morality, which doesn't have any basis. You can't start with your conclusion and then work backwards because that isn't how evidence works. It would be like saying morality is grounded in this pineapple and then say, well, how did you get there? Oh, I just started with it. I presupposed the pineapple is the moral basis. A true model of morality is one that starts with the evidence and then tries to create principles that describe the pattern in the evidence and then tries to infer the grounds of that, which theism doesn't do.
Okay, so a couple of responses. First one said most philosophers. Well, I don't care much about what most philosophers when it comes to atheistic philosophers.
Well, just to clarify, because you mentioned that some atheists said it's impossible to have to ground morality without atheism. That argument is
morality in an objective manner.
Yeah, so that's superseded by the vast majority of academics in the field. So if you want to say some atheists say this, they don't really get an opinion. The vast majority supersedes that. Go ahead.
Sure, let me explain my position. So the problem with saying most philosophers is that when you see, not just when it comes to philosophy in any field, pretty much, you always got atheist philosophers not engaging seriously in other branches as a theology or engaging in history, engaging in you got some engaging in science because you need science in order to build some cosmological arguments, but you see a lot of lacking in the other areas. So I wouldn't trust atheist philosophers as they are not as well rounded as Christian philosophers that can debate in so many different areas, including science, history, philosophy, and other sub branches of those. Also, the appealing to most philosophers. That is pretty fallacious. Even if it was most philosophers, most scientists, most whatever, we've had consensuses before, and that doesn't determine the truth of a statement for having a fallacy of appeal to majority.
Well, I think you might have misunderstood. Wait, 1 second. I think you might have misunderstood my argument here. So my argument is that when you claimed many atheists have said we can't have an objective basis, that argument is superseded by the fact that the vast majority of people in the field of ethics who are atheists say that's wrong. So this wasn't about the truth of morality here. This was just refuting your claim that many atheists have said we can't have objective morality. No one cares what they have to say. That sentence that you made is superseded by the fact that the vast majority of atheists say that's wrong. So this wasn't about morality.
That's why I'm saying you should let me finish, because I was actually gonna touch that point. Well, first, one of the things when it comes to you saying most philosophers, if we see when it comes to most philosophers in the area of philosophy of religion, that they don't take the new atheist form of lack theism seriously. So I'm here respecting your position to for you to present your new atheist lack theism position, and when you say that most philosophers can actually appeal to. When you're saying that they can appeal to objective morality, they do it in a different way. So, for example, like if like as the game of chess analogy, like creating objective laws in the game of chess, saying that pieces can only move a certain way. Yes, of course, you'll be making and you'll be it'll be pretty much subjective on the person that made the rules of chess.
I'm not following what you're saying. So, wait. I'm not quite understanding. Wait. Pause for a second. Pause for a second. I don't understand what you're saying here. So, most philosophers are moral realists. They believe morality is objective. They're not just making up rules on a chessboard and calling that objective, any more so than theism is. Theism is making up rules and then claiming it's objective. But obviously, you can't just say that's subjective, because the whole point of the theory is to provide an objective basis. So most philosophers believe in an objective morality. They are moral realists.
Sure, but I would argue that they cannot ground in any way of having an objective morality. It would always be fallacious and non-objective if it's a non-given explanation. So no.
How is that different?
It would actually be your burden of proof to actually present to me a model of having objective morality from an atheistic perspective. So I guess you can start with that.
Right. So all of the models for atheistic secular morality in philosophy and ethics are better than the theistic model. That's why the theistic model isn't taken seriously.
I'm not asking if it's better. I'm telling you if you can present a model for objective morality.
Well, I don't need to. Again, the point was here is that you claimed that some atheists have said that you can't have an objective morality, as if that's relevant. It's not. And I can show it's not relevant because most atheists, philosophers, who are the majority in the field, say that's wrong. So the only point here wasn't about morality. The point here was about your quote that is irrelevant. So that wasn't one of the arguments you presented in your introduction. So I want to go through those first, and then we can jump into the morality thing. The second argument,
I would highly disagree with that.
Disagree with what?
It's the same part of the argument of the second part of my case that they cannot argue.
Well, you only mentioned logic in that part,
morality.
So I want to.
Yeah,
So I want to let's go with just the logic for now.
Morality, even if you do it with morality, you will have to do the same with logic. So you have to present your burden of proof for any of the morality or for logic to be in. You got to present the case for it to be.
Right. So again, objective. I want to go with this in order. So I want to go in order. So this in your opening, the second thing you presented was logic, not morality. So let's go with that one first. Logic can be explained by atheism perfectly well. Logic is a system of language invented by humans to describe the reality, the stuff that exists. You don't need a God for that. It's better explained in this way, as logic would also apply to a God. God cannot be God and not God at the same time. Therefore, God can't be the origin of logic, because logic applies to God. So either logic is some fundamental abstract thing that exists prior to everything else, or it's a language invented by humans to describe things that exist. Therefore, it's perfectly easy to make a ground of logic in atheism. Logic is a language that describes reality. Where is your issue with that?
Well, there's a mountain of issues with that. So we say that first, the first problem is that you're claiming that logic is a human convention, that pretty much humans invented logic. Humans are pretty much the cause of logic, and that you're claiming that God is since God is bound to logic, therefore God cannot be cannot be the creator of logic. So the first problem with the first one of the human convention, if you have a different human convention than the human convention that we currently have, then you could pretty much falsify the current logic.
Wait,
That
what?
means
Wait.
that
So pause there. Pause there.
no interruptions, man.
No, no, no. We got to go one at a time. So that's your
This is the
first
last time.
objection.
This is
This
the last
is
time I take an interruption.
no. We're gonna
Yeah,
go
man,
one point at a time. We're gonna go one point at a time, or I'm gonna mute you. So this, what you said was that if humans make up a different logical system of logic, well, then we can justify anything. No, because logic is describing a thing. Like I can make up a description and say the sun is purple, but that description is wrong. So even though I have a language that is English and those words can construct a sentence that could describe anything, because they're describing a something that exists, that correspondence to the thing that exists can't be anything. So logic as a language was made up by humans. It has human conventional things like modus ponens, modus tollens, but because their truth is not contingent on their definitions, their truth is contingent on what they are describing, they can't justify anything. So your first objection fails.
No, it doesn't fail. And one of the things, man, I'm not going to tolerate any more interruptions if I'm making
You can
a
leave
case.
if you want. This is my show.
Okay, all right, man. I'm not going to tolerate any more interruptions, but I'm going to represent my case, and hopefully we'll have a respectful discussion, or I'll be leaving, man. So, okay. So when it comes to you saying that that is pretty much like building language in order to describe things, there's an underlying factors from which we give a name to a certain thing. For example, if you analyze the ontology of a stop sign, it will have a hexagonal shape with a metal bar. It will have a red in color. It'll have the stop letters on that, and you can differentiate a stop sign from a safety cone by the shape that is given. You can differentiate the cone by the by the cylindrical pattern that the cone have. So even if you try to say that, oh no, it's not a cone, it's a stop sign, well, you're just pretty much using the ontological factors of the cone and applying it to a stop sign. So you're pretty much just calling something else the whatever name you want to call it, but the underlying factors behind each of the objects, that is what is not changing. It's the same thing as calling a school bus, calling it a sports car. It's not a sports car since it doesn't have the ontological faculties of a sports car. So you cannot say that it is based on language. We give language based on objective principles of logic.
Wait, what does that have to do with my argument? Because my argument is that we made the language of logic to describe things. We can describe things accurately or inaccurately. Therefore, describing a school bus is not a school bus would be inaccurate. So we don't use that version of English. We use the version of English that describes it accurately. So how is that different from logic?
Well, then it is not a human convention. Then you're not giving you're not pretty much focusing on giving a language to each of those faculties. You're pretty much having the faculties, and you give it a name to it. So it is not it has to be objective. If it's not objective, then you would have the same. You're pretty much you cannot have.
I have no idea what you're saying right now.
Because there's underlying factors that cannot be denied by any person giving those particular things a name.
Yes, so logic is a name that we apply to reality. Reality exists. Reality has properties. Reality is reality. And then we make a language, A equals A, the law of identity, to describe those properties in reality. Logic isn't a property. Logic is a series of words that we use to describe something that is there. So if I say there is a tree, the English sentence doesn't matter at all. Like you could say it in Japanese or German or whatever. The thing that exists is the tree. The tree is objective. It really is there. My sentence that describes the tree is a made-up human convention. Logic is the same thing. The law of identity, A equals A, is a human convention that describes something that's really there, which is reality. So how is that not, like, how does anything you said respond to that?
Well, look, you pretty much just say the same thing. is that you're pretty much arguing that there's underlying factors that would just give it a name in
Yes.
different languages. So a tree is a tree, either if you say árbol in español or a tree in English or in Japanese, whatever language you want to put it on, the tree will be a tree. So then it is not a human convention. We pretty much just give a name to whatever the underlying ontology of a tree is. So it will
Right.
be objective. You cannot appeal to logic as a human convention. If we apply logic as a human convention, you pretty much will be self-contradictory.
Wait.
Because if
The logic isn't the thing we're describing. The logic is the description.
no, that's not what I said.
So my argument, what I said, is that logic is a description. Logic is a language made up by humans. It doesn't exist. Logic exists nowhere. But the thing we're describing with logic does exist. So if I say A equals A, what I'm describing is reality. Reality exists, the logic does not. The logic is just made up human language. So how is that, where is the problem there? Like, for example, there's many different versions of logic. There are different logical languages. There's many-valued logic, quasi-logic, there's quantum logic, there's all kinds of different logics that are not all the same. They're obviously, they have to be languages. Now, obviously, they can refer to something that exists, like reality is there, and we can use standard logic A equals A to describe reality. But the logic isn't the thing. It's not the objective thing that's there. It's the words we're using to describe the thing that's there.
Yeah, but exactly. If you will get the same problem of human convention. Yeah, either way you try to paint it, it'll be human convention in the sense that yes, we have to give it a language to describe those underlying factors that make the ontology of a thing and its relationship to a thing. But it is something that we identify and that we point out through language. It is not. But those underlying factors are what make logic intelligible at all.
Right. I totally agree. So I agree that there are underlying factors, and for me, those underlying factors is reality. Reality is the underlying factor. The logic isn't the underlying factor. The logic is a bunch of words we made up to describe the underlying factor. So the fact that the logic is a human convention doesn't refute the objectivity of the underlying factors, but those underlying factors aren't the logic. They're something different. They're reality itself.
Well, pretty much logic will be the system to identify these kind of things, but logic wouldn't work if we didn't have these underlying things. So that is why it cannot be a human convention, and that's why you cannot just say that it is a different language and that there's different languages of logic that can be applied. So you will have to present a way in which you can present logic as objective. If you can't have logic as objective and you say that the logic it's a human convention, again it'll be self-contradictory, as if there was other human convention that will contradict what you're saying. Pretty much logic will be unusable, as it'll be true here and false over there, and it cannot be true and false at the same time. So you have to build a model for objective logic. I'm saying you have to build a model, and you got to present a model to me.
Well, I just did. So I just proved that that was false. So we can have a language. There's many different languages of logic. They're not all the same. Standard logic, fuzzy logic, quantum logic, paraconsistent logic, diatheistic logic. There's lots of different kinds of logic. Logic was they're literally languages made by philosophers. And the fact that there's many of them doesn't change any of them, the truth value, because the truth value has nothing to do with the logic. The truth value has to do with, does this sentence correspond to reality? That's what makes it true, not the logic itself. The system of logic itself could define something as true or whatever, like A does not equal A. We're going to define that as true. Like you could do that, but that doesn't correspond to reality. So what makes a system of logic or a language of logic true is whether or not it corresponds to reality. So like we could make a language of English or Klingon or something that says all bachelors are married, or all bachelors are married. Clearly it wouldn't correspond to reality. We can make up the language just fine, but what makes it true is whether or not that language corresponds to reality. So what makes a logic true is whether or not that logic corresponds to reality. You don't need logic itself to be objective. You just need a system of language that can describe the objective facts of the world.
Exactly. That is I actually agree with it, but I don't agree with the with how you're drawing like a conclusion from that. So what is it that you're making the same problem? Well, even if you want to say that maybe there's some model of logic out there that describes reality as accurate as possible, then that system of logic that it describes life, I mean the existence of as accurate as possible, then that must be objective. If there's not an objective ground on whatever describes reality, then there could be objective system of logic. So I'm asking you, how can you build a model of logic in an atheistic perspective?
Because logic describes reality. So I agree there has to be an objective thing for the logic to describe, which is reality. And then logic is a language made up by humans to describe that thing. So I'm not sure which part of that you're not quite understanding. Like, that seems pretty obvious. Like, where is the issue here with saying reality exists, reality has some set of properties, we're going to make up a language to describe those sets of properties?
Mm, I would say that the problem is that from a non-theistic perspective, that you cannot describe reality. You have to start with God as the basis of your epistemology in order to understand what is reality. So what
Could
is
you
the
explain
basis
that
of
more?
it?
I don't understand that. So, like, if there was no God and there was a reality and minds existed, why wouldn't they be able to make languages to describe reality?
Because you wouldn't know what reality actually is. So I would ask you, how do you know reality what reality actually is?
How do I know what reality actually is? Like, even if I didn't, why would that mean I couldn't make languages to describe reality?
Because you wouldn't know what reality actually is.
Well, I could make up a language, and like I could say gobbledygook or whatever, and it's possible that that sentence could describe reality whether or not I know it. So why does my knowing of reality matter to my ability to make a language that can describe reality?
Can you repeat that again?
So yeah, so like I can make up a language. I can say the words, "The sky is blue." Now, if I'm blind and I've never seen the sky, it's the statement is still true. The statement still describes reality, whether or not I know it. So if you imagine all human beings were blind, so they have no idea what the color of the sky is, and someone said the sky is blue, they have constructed a language that describes reality accurately. So they have a true language, even though they don't know anything. They don't know what the color of the sky is. So whether or not I can know what reality is, or have a grounds of knowledge, which I do, but whether or not I do doesn't make a difference to the fact that I can still construct a language to describe reality, does it?
I would say that you have the huge problem of induction. You don't know if the current events by repeating them, if they can repeat themselves after they have repeated themselves for a long time. And as if you have an event, let's say that you go through a neighborhood and you see 20 houses, you cannot 20 greenhouses. You cannot say that there's going to be a next a next house that is also green. You wouldn't know that. Or the problem of induction, you don't know what is going to be beyond that. So let me present this analogy with that, for example, with that computer. For example, let's say a computer is programmed to not know where it came from. So let's say that that computer is deriving some sort of results with its own binary code, and it cannot know with Cartesian certainty where the objective grounding of the logic of the computer, where it can ground the truth of its of its origin. However, if you start, for example, if the creator of the computer or the software or whatever system that we're talking here about here in the computer, so you have a direct connection from if the creator of the computer makes the computer and puts the code that there was that there was that the systems were made by that creator, and that those systems have the same yeah, pretty much it gives you a basis for the an epistemic basis, and it can explain the complexity of its own of the thinking system of the computer. So the computer wouldn't know with complete certainty where the information came from, but it will make more sense with a whether to have epistemic certainty to trust the maker of the computer. If you don't
What does this
if
have to
the
do with what I said?
if the computer doesn't start with a creator in its premise, it wouldn't be able to in its first
So
premise.
none of this addresses what I said.
Yeah, so it's that's the basis of their epistemology, and that's what I'm saying. That if you don't have a
You're not
creator,
saying
you
anything
won't
that addressed what I said.
have any logic as a basis of your
So
epistemology.
again, you have to actually address what I said. So what I said was, is if you have no knowledge, this means no induction. You have no induction because you have nothing to base this off of. You're completely blind. Every human being is all blind. That means no induction. And somebody just says the sentence, "The sky is blue." That sentence that they have constructed can describe reality even if they have no knowledge. It doesn't make a difference. Like they could be a calculator randomly generating letters, and if they generate the sentence, "The sky is blue," that sentence can be true, and it doesn't make a difference what the calculator knows, or if it has any knowledge, or if it's conscious at all. The knowledge makes no difference to the ability to construct a language that accurately describes reality.
But again, you will have the same problem of induction, and you are assuming a lot of presuppositions in the sense. No, man, don't make those faces, man.
What you just said is completely stupid. Like I literally said induction makes no difference.
We start to be condescending, man.
So
So
I literally just said
no,
induction means
don't
nothing here.
interrupt me. Don't interrupt me. So I would say you're making a lot of assumptions on your
Name
presuppositions.
them.
Okay, that's what I'm doing, man. Stop interrupting me. So one of the assumptions you are assuming the uniformity of nature. You're
No, I'm
saying
not.
that's your experience, but you don't know if you are assuming the uniformity of nature or not.
I didn't. That didn't happen in my argument.
Well, if you don't assume the uniformity of nature, you can have anything. But the problem is you cannot assume
No.
it in an atheistic perspective.
No, again, that has nothing to do with what I said. Like you weren't listening to my argument. My argument is imagine we know nothing. Literally nothing. We're all blind. We can't see the color of the sky at all. Doesn't matter what the universe is going to be like 5 seconds from now. It doesn't matter what the universe was like 5 seconds previously to now. I'm going to construct a sentence. Randomly generated sentence. The sky is blue. That sentence, at this exact point in time and no point in the future, no point in the past, that sentence could describe reality just fine, which means it is possible for me to construct a language that describes reality independent of my knowledge. I don't need to know anything. It doesn't matter what the future, it could be wrong in 5 seconds. Doesn't make a difference. At this exact point in time, that sentence describes reality just fine. Doesn't it?
You can claim that you can explain reality as it is right now and on what you are experiencing, but I'm arguing for the basis of whatever you can know. So you cannot know other things other than what you are currently experiencing, and that is a big problem. So I'm asking you to explain how you can know anything other than whatever you are experiencing. And the problem is that with atheism, you cannot know anything other than what you are currently experiencing.
Wait, I'm talking about logic here. We're not talking about knowledge. Again, so knowledge doesn't matter to the conversation. I'm saying,
But
you
you're moving
create...
it from morality to logic to knowledge.
No, I'm
So
staying on logic. I'm staying on logic because that was your second point. So logic, what your argument was, is that you cannot construct a logic without a God. I'm saying, yes, you can. Logic is a language that describes reality. Then you said, well, you can't know that what you're saying corresponds to reality. And I said, I don't care. That doesn't make a difference. The argument here is, can I construct a sentence or an argument or a language that can describe reality? And whether or not I know it doesn't make a difference. If I say the sky is blue, even if I'm blind and I don't know it, that sentence either does or does not correspond to reality, regardless of my knowledge. So obviously it's possible for me to construct a language like logic that can describe reality, even if I know nothing, which invalidates your argument that you need a God and you need some objective grounds of knowledge to construct a language to describe reality. You clearly don't. You don't even need a mind to do this. A calculator could come up with a string of letters, the sky is blue, and that calculator has created a language that can describe reality. So moving to my knowledge here is just red herring. It like this doesn't answer the question. You said you can't construct a language to describe reality without God. I just did.
no, mhm. No, I'm not saying that you cannot construct a language. That the problem is that in order to construct that language, you need the uniformity of nature and the uniformity of the ontological principles that every single thing in existence to be uniform in order to explain it with a logical language. So what you have to do is you have to presuppose the uniformity of nature. You presuppose the loss of logic that can describe reality as it is. But the problem is you have to take as axioms what reality actually is. So the problem is that you cannot just take things as axioms. You got to explain how your atheistic presuppositions can fit into those axioms. That is the first premise of the second argument that I make, and that is what you are not answering. You're not answering where those how do you ground the presuppositions from where you build the axioms that you're trying to build, and you have to appeal for you have to presuppose the uniformity of nature in order to do that. So how do you do it in a non-godly manner
Well, I don't
without God?
presuppose anything. I have zero presuppositions in my worldview. To construct a logic doesn't require anything about knowledge of the universe or the way reality is. Like literally the definition of a priori knowledge is things that do not require access to an external world to construct. So constructing a language doesn't require any knowledge of the world. It could all change tomorrow, and that wouldn't make the logic any more or less valid. So knowledge of the future makes no difference here. To answer your question, I ground knowledge in I think, therefore I am. I exist. It is impossible for me to think I exist and be wrong. And I can use that as a basis to know about that I exist, that reality is reality. I can build the laws of logic, the law of identity based off of this fact. I can then build a full fundamental logic off of this fact, a standard logic or a not paraconsistent logic. And I can build math off of this fact. And then I can use those as a starting point to then say, there's some difference between my imagination and my experience. I imagine a unicorn. I don't see the unicorn. There's some difference between these two things. And build an entire model of the world just off of that one fact. I think, therefore I am. I don't need to presuppose a God at all.
Yeah, I think you do. When it comes to now that you mentioned mathematics and also that we mentioned doing logic based on the uniformity of nature. For example, when it comes to math, you would say that math is a human convention, also, right? You would say that it is also a human convention in order to
Yeah, it's a
describe.
language that describes reality.
Yeah, but would you say that we discover math, or would you say that that we build math?
We
What happened?
invented math to describe the things we discovered, which are objects.
Yeah, but the thing is, when it comes to the elegance of mathematics, when it comes to you see extremely complex structures of mathematical principles, and the same thing can be said for logic. That you find a uniformity of nature so complex that that in an atheistic position cannot explain that uniformity of nature. So that complexity, it'll be extremely it'll be impossible to describe it in an atheistic perspective. So when it comes to the applicability of mathematics, it is too complex for it to arrive from an atheistic sort of perspective. And I'm going to give an example. For example, if you have a car, you can have two explanations. One explanation with the maker, in the sense that the car maker can make the can pretty much use his reasoning, its logic, and the uniformity of nature in order to build a car. However, if you try to appeal to an atheistic model of how to make a car, you can make all this improbable stories on how to make a car, which will be let's say like a tire getting fossil fuels getting pretty hot in, I don't know, lava, and then it rolls and it creates a tire, and the tire falls into a metal rim, and the rim falls into an engine, and you can make this naturalistic explanation of how a car can be explained in a naturalistic manner, but the problem is that it is so complex that it is better explained by a theistic perspective, and that is one of the things that I think that atheism cannot account for. So it'll be much more improbable for you to do it in that manner.
Well, this is why I'm interrupting you, because you keep listing a bunch of completely unrelated arguments, and they're all different directions to go down. So math, perfectly fine just as a language. There is absolutely nothing about the patterns in math that has anything to do with a god or does in any way refute atheism. Like, oh, there's a pattern in the math. Like, yes, there's a pattern in English too. Like, if you have English to accurately describe reality, it's a pattern. Can you inaccurately describe reality with English? Yes, I can say there is the square root of a pork chop over there. Like, clearly that's inaccurate. And I can say 1 plus 1 equals 7, and that's inaccurate. Math is a language exactly like English. You have sentences that correspond to reality, 1 plus 1 equals 2. You have sentences that do not correspond to reality, f equals ma times 37. And you have sentences that are self-contradictory, 1 plus 1 equals 7. The fact that you can uh, construct certain kinds of math that are accurate, that accurately describe reality, doesn't tell us anything, because there's infinitely many more kinds of math that you can describe that don't describe reality. It's like you can use math to describe anything. This isn't in any way evidence of a god. The complexity argument is like literally complexity has nothing to do with a god. Complexity itself isn't an argument. You'd have to ask, why is there a kind of a god that would have the properties to create this kind of a universe as opposed to a different kind of a god? Uh, what created God? Oh, was it uncreated? Oh, well, okay, then I can just say the universe was uncreated and it has the property to create the universe just as it is, just like the God does. So both of those are solved exactly as well on both hypotheses. And none of this has anything to do with the uniformity of nature. Math doesn't have anything to do with the uniformity of nature. Logic doesn't have anything to do with the uniformity of nature. You don't have to assume that nature is going to be uniform for anything. All of the arguments I've presented can be false in 5 seconds. They're still true in this current 5 seconds. And you're still getting lots of beepies on Facebook. We're getting
Yeah,
all
I'm sorry. I'm getting a lot of messages. Um, yeah, I guess. But anyways, so you, one of the oh man, I wish I could turn this off. I don't know. Maybe one day I'll find out. Okay. So as I was saying with the complexity of nature, you have three options. You have a intelligent design, chance, or natural necessity. And I'm arguing that, for example, when you plug in any other stuff of nature into that equation, you will get that complexity is better explained by by an intelligent mind rather than chance or natural
Wait,
processes.
what do you mean by plug stuff into the equation to get it better? I don't know what that means.
So I'm saying that something complex, it's better explained by an intelligent mind rather than being explained by chance or natural necessity. So
What?
you can do the same with the car, with the painting, with the computer. So you can build a natural model to claim natural necessity for all of these patterns, or you can make saying that it was chance that a computer got built in by chance. But I would argue that it is better explained. All of those are better explained by a creator rather than natural necessity or chance. And the same thing for the universe and the nature itself is better explained by a mind. Complexity is better explained by a mind than natural necessity and or chance.
Yeah,
And
so I agree in the case of a car. In the case of a car, the current laws of physics, there are no laws of physics that would necessitate the existence of a car, and the percent chance of them occurring from the laws of physics is very low. Therefore, we can say that it's most likely designed because there are no laws of physics that necessitate a car. In the case of the universe, there could absolutely be laws of physics that necessitate all of the current laws in the universe. That makes perfect sense. Like, there's nothing that's the consensus in physics. So I don't know why you think that that would indicate intelligent design, because there is no contradiction in saying that the laws of the universe could be necessary.
well, that brings us to the other point you bring that you're saying that pretty much you can bring any omni property or any property of God and just pretty much plug it into a naturalistic perspective. But as we mentioned before, there's ontological features for every object and every even abstract objects, you know, and simply plugging in the same omni characteristics of a
When did I say any of this? What?
yeah, yeah, yeah. You said you. that is not what you were saying, but this applies to how you're saying that you can pretty much put any omni properties and anything in any quality of God, and build a naturalistic perspective. That is pretty much what you just argued before.
I don't think
You
so.
didn't put in words, but that's pretty much what you're arguing for.
I said that there could be some fundamental necessary thing which is determined, like a
Exactly.
determined.
Exactly. That is exactly what I'm saying. That you cannot just put those properties and plug it into naturalism, since you pretty much you wouldn't be able to put it in
You can't. You're saying you can't have a necessary non-God thing.
Maybe let me explain with that analogy. So, pretty much imagine that you have pixies, and you're claiming that okay, it was not God. So, because I can just add the attributes of God into a pixie, and you can say, okay, well, these pixies are powerful, it's omniscient, it's immaterial. But the thing is that the ontological principles of a pixie would give it a certain body, a certain um, yeah, pretty much a certain shape, which would be contingent, and God cannot have a shape or be contingent in a physical manner. It has to be immaterial and omnipresent, which means that it's in every single place. So if you try to argue this, that a pixie has those properties, then it wouldn't look like a pixie. So you cannot pretty much just plug in the ontological values of God into a pixie and just call it a pixie. It's again the same problem with a tree. There's an underlying shape of a tree that we describe it with the name tree, but simply calling it a stop sign wouldn't change the underlying factors of the tree. There's a difference between a tree and a stop sign. There's a difference
Oh,
between God
I think I
and
understand what
there's
you're saying.
between God and the naturalistic perspectives that you are putting. So you're pretty much putting the God the descriptions of God into your naturalistic models.
Well, so necessary isn't any description of God from the Bible. So I'm saying there's a necessary quantum field. What is its properties that you think are contradictory?
Um, it depends what properties. What properties are you claiming that? Yeah, pretty much. Other than the necessity, what other properties would you say that these naturalistic perspective of yours would have? So, what
Uh,
properties does God have that you can plug in over there?
oh, I didn't mention God at all here. I just said there's a necessary thing, which is a necessary quantum field. So it doesn't have anything to do with taking properties from a God. I think you might be referencing like other arguments I've made in other videos, like for naturalistic pantheism. But I mean, I can defend that too. But here, all I'm saying is we have a necessary object, which is a quantum field, and that's the necessary thing. It doesn't have any properties of a God, I don't think. I guess maybe
Well,
you could say eternal, all powerful, maybe.
well, okay. So you're claiming that your quantum model of a has a necessary existence, but the problem is that for something, if you compare both um, both things, if to see if they're necessary, it also have to be the necessary first cause has to have other qualities in order to explain reality. It has to have all power, which is having all power. Having all power is not in the sense of you can make even contradictory things, but being all powerful means doing all things that can be done based on the on what the first
Well,
cause can.
why do you need that one? So,
Yeah,
wait,
just give me one second.
well, I
So
don't want to go down like 10 different routes. I want to go one at a time if possible. So, why do you need all
no, man.
powerful?
No, yeah, I think you've been doing that the whole thing, man.
Wh-
I can't just tolerate that much,
No,
man.
no, we got to go
You
one
need to
point at a
jump
time
in
here.
from several
We
topics.
got to
No,
go
man.
one point at a time here.
I've let you jump in from topic to
You've talked
topic.
more than me in this conversation. Just go with me
No,
one point at a time. So, you said
no,
you
I don't.
need
I don't.
all powerful. Why do you need all powerful? Why do you need to be able to create all possibilities and not just the possibility of the thing we see right now?
Um, well, I would say that it needs to be all powerful in the sense that everything that is created has to be explained by this thing, and yeah, that
Well, sure, I
Yeah, you
agree.
won't like that. Huh?
I totally agree. But why do we need something? Because you said all powerful is the ability to do everything that's possible. Now, the universe we see isn't everything that's possible. It's just one possibility. So why do we need something that's all powerful that can do every possibility and not just the one possibility we see?
Can you repeat that?
Yeah. So you said that you need something for the necessary thing needs to be all powerful. And by all powerful, you said something that can do all possibilities, all logically possible things. And
No,
what? Did I get that
oh,
wrong?
no, that's not what I argued. I didn't say all possible things, including the incoherent things. I say that all possible things that pretty much can be anything that can be possible. So
Logically possible. So all
yeah,
logically possible things.
yeah, all logically
Okay.
possible things in that are connected to the to whatever the first cause lets it to be possible.
Right, right. So that's totally fine with that. So, but all logically possible things is a lot more than just the stuff that's happened in our universe, right? Because there could be a universe with two stars, or our solar system could have two stars. That's logically possible. So an all-powerful being would have to be able to do that also, essentially. But what I'm saying is that you don't need something that could do all logical possibilities for the necessary thing. The necessary thing could just produce everything that we see exactly as it is right now and nothing else. And that could still work as a necessary being. So why do you need all powerful, the ability to produce all logical possibilities?
Well, that's why I was going to bring the other qualities of God, because they have to work in conjunction. And one of the other qualities of God is the sense of agency. So the thing is that if you try to build a atheistic model of a non-agent thing, how you account for how the singularity would pretty much decide to create something or have the drive to create something. So you'll pretty much be forced to have a multiverse, because if it just is for natural necessity, it would be just creating things all over the place. But so it has to have all the omni properties that has,
Uh,
including agency. And if it has agency, I mean that's pretty much theism. If
so I
you
didn't say I said no agency in mind. So I said like quantum field. Quantum fields don't have agency. They don't have brains. The properties of quantum fields cause them to do stuff like create universes. But you don't need a multiverse. You can just create a single universe. You could create this universe and that's it, just the way it is, and that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, but you will have to make the action of creating this universe. But how would it get to arbitrarily create these complex action in which we have this fine tuned universe with the objectivity on it.
It's determined through its properties to produce a universe exactly like this one, and nothing else.
That is arbitrary.
Uh, Determined is the opposite of arbitrary. What do you mean by arbitrary?
Yeah, you're pretty much saying that that complexity has to arrive first for this thing and then the way it is, and I can argue the same thing that just got the universe is, because that's how God made it. So I would say it's the same type of argument.
Sort of. So what you said is that it's impossible, or that the necessary thing must have the property of all powerfulness. And to disprove that, what I'd have to say is here is a necessary thing that doesn't have that property, and it can explain everything. So here is a necessary thing that's logically possible, doesn't have any contradictions, where there is a quantum field that is determined to make exactly our universe and nothing but our universe. And that could be a necessary thing, and it doesn't have the property of all powerful. Therefore, you don't need the property of all powerful. I agree that that would be if I just asserted this is the case. There is a necessary quantum field, and it's going to produce exactly our universe and nothing but our universe. Yes, that would be arbitrary, but I'm not arguing that that is the case. I'm arguing that you don't need an all powerful thing to be the necessary thing.
Well, that means that from your model, everything that we see right now will be coincidence, either chance or natural necessity. And I
Determined.
think, yeah, exactly. So
Is there a
I
problem with
think
that?
yeah, I think there's a big problem. That's why it's a three-part argument, a three-part case that I've made, including the the truth of Christianity from the minimal facts case of Gary Habermas, which pretty much if we get more reasons to adhere to theism over atheism, we would choose theism, and that is why I brought the
Minimal facts approach.
the minimal facts case to connect it to Christianity. So if we take God as a given as a for the sake of argument, we would expect to see revelatory things as I'm saying, the singularity of the first cause has to have the sense of agency. So if it make the choice to make this universe as it is. It would have to interact with this universe that they created, and that's why we see the resurrection of Jesus, and that's why we see the results of Christianity. So I think what you're doing is you're taking it each part on its own when you have to take it as a whole, and we haven't dealt so far at all with the case of Gary Habermas so far. So yes,
Sure.
I guess you should just respond to it.
Sure, absolutely. So the minimal facts approach is that Jesus died, there was an empty tomb, there was post-death appearances, and the spread of Christianity. Those are the ones you presented. I'm happy to agree with all of those. Those are all better explained by naturalism, by bereavement delusion, which is 60% of people see and hear dead loved ones and have experiences with them, touching them, doing whatever. It's a very common feature in human psychology, explained by naturalism perfectly fine. If you add that with social conditioning, which is like if everyone's sitting around a Ouija board and they see a word come out like Devon or whatever, the collective group will then talk about what caused that event, and they will come to a collective understanding of what the source was, which is like a ghost or a spirit or somebody's dead aunt or whatever. And if you add those two together, bereavement delusion, where they're seeing loved ones that had died, combined with social conditioning, where there's a group of people who are talking about these experiences they had, combined with exaggeration, you can explain every single one of those just fine with no appeal to a god. And since all of these things I listed, bereavement delusion, social conditioning, exaggeration, are extremely common and well known and documented and proven to exist all throughout human history, these are a better explanation of the resurrection of Jesus than him actually resurrecting. So like if we see a hoof print in the snow and we know horses exist, the horse is always going to be a better explanation than a unicorn, because if we base the explanation that can explain all of the data in something that is built with things we already know exist, that's a better explanation than adding properties we don't know exist.
Okay, so a big problem with that is that when you take the third case of the Gary Habermas case, you see that the third option is the third fact, it talks about the appearance of 500. So you don't just have that social engineering that you're claiming, and that simply hearing voices. What you have in the gospel accounts is Jesus appearing not just to friends, his disciples, but also enemies, also different people. You also have him appearing at the same time to these groups of people and staying for hours, and that is a phenomena that is not explained by what you just say. And the second appeal that you made, you were claiming that that we favor whatever is more probable, or whatever is more likely from what we know of, in the sense that you're saying that that pretty much, if we've never seen a unicorn, that since we have seen horses, we should believe that it is a horse. But that epistemology will never let us to believe in anything improbable as something improbable is by necessity something that is not something that is not currently seen. So, for example, if you try to argue that let's say that I tell you there's a giraffe. Bless you, Corona. So if you have a giraffe on your if I tell you that there's a giraffe in your room, and you say that it is not normal to you never see giraffes in the city. You usually see them either in zoos, or you see them in the wilderness, then it is impossible for me to have for there to be a giraffe in my room. It'll be impossible under the epistemology that you are presenting. However, that is not what I'm. That will never work from what I'm presenting, because, for example, if there was, for example, a bet, or I don't know, some YouTuber making a prank and putting a a giraffe on your room, that'll be the best explanation if there are sufficient conditions that make it the best explanation. However, if there's nothing that makes it the best explanation, it won't be the best explanation. So what I'm saying is that, for example, in order for the giraffe in the room to be the best explanation, for example, there must be something something extraordinary going on, which will be kind of like a prank for a TV show, or so some sort of prank in which they put a giraffe maybe behind the walls, and they probably um, hit it with I don't know, with a, yeah, with some other thing. Maybe it's a baby giraffe and it's just a small, and they put it under the table, or in some hidden place. So it could be true that there's a giraffe in your room, and however, it'll be the giraffe in the room will be the best explanation if you have the qualities that make it the best explanation. If you don't have any of that, and you just arbitrarily say, well, it's just in the room and it just appeared magically, of course, it wouldn't be the best explanation. Now applying this logic into the Christian case, I would say that, for example, with the hallucinations, you have an extreme example, but with the whole Christian case, in the sense that you got Jesus raising from the dead, finding being crucified publicly, so everybody knew that he was crucified. You find the empty tomb, which the guards wouldn't have been dead if there was no empty tomb, and you have the postmodern appearances. When you take it all together, you have a case in which the best explanation is that that Jesus actually appeared to the 500. So you cannot just appeal to something being to something being more common or uncommon than other things. So
Uh,
that's
so all of those things seem to be perfectly well explained by bereavement delusion plus social conditioning. Like the appearance of 500, that happens for all kinds of things. There's over 10,000 people who saw Santi Sai Baba do miracles in person, and there are hundreds of people who've seen UFOs at the same time. There are thousands of people who've seen ghost stories and the miracles at Fatima. I don't know what your position is on those. There are miracles of all kinds of religions which have thousands of people who saw these occur, and they demonstrably didn't scientifically. So it's very good evidence that those are psychological conditions from social conditioning, where there's a group of people who see an event and then interpret that event in a collective way because they were interacting as a society. So the appearance of the 500 is really easy to explain. The other thing you mentioned was knowing that Jesus was dead. Like in every case of bereavement delusion, people know that their loved one is dead. That's why it's a bereavement delusion. They think they're seeing someone who they know is dead. And the fact that he stayed for hours, same thing. Bereavement delusion does last for hours, also explained by bereavement delusion. You mentioned that my epistemology will never let us believe something is because if we only prioritize known things, well, that's not true at all. Like if you thought like the unicorn was the explanation of the footprint in the snow, you'd have to make a novel testable prediction. You'd say, if this was a unicorn, we would see the unicorn's horn stuck in a tree over there or whatever, or tree horn marks or something. Though that would be a novel testable prediction that would lend evidence to the unicorn. So if you are able to make novel testable predictions based off your hypothesis that go beyond what we already know, so if you predict something new, that would be evidence for the new thing, including a god or Jesus' resurrection, etc. So my epistemology totally allows for new things. The problem is that everything explained by the resurrection is old things. Those are exactly what we see happening all over the world from bereavement delusion plus social conditioning plus exaggeration of stories.
So when you're saying the social conditioning, you're not taking all the factors collectively. You're taking each of them separately, in the sense that, for example, you're saying that you can get social conditioning, or someone seeing their loved ones for a couple hours, but you don't see them physically. You don't eat with them physically, and you don't have that in group. And you separate it with the alien example, saying that oh, everybody saw the alien, but you have other more plausible explanations. That's why we're talking about an inference to the best explanation. So if someone says that they say it was an alien, I don't know, maybe a light in the sky that was acting pretty weird, maybe it was maybe it was that, maybe it was aliens. It will depend if it's the best explanation and depending on the background evidence. So one could be open to aliens, but it'll have to be the best explanation. And with your example of predictions being testable, you pretty much are not taking account that we're talking about a being with certain yeah, with certain decisions and certain character, certain pretty much that takes decisions in a certain manner. So, for example, if I say that I have a Muslim terrorist in my closet, and for example, and I say, okay, okay, if it's a Muslim terrorist, then tell him to say Christianity is true 10 times. But a Muslim terrorist wouldn't say that Christianity is true 10 times because it has a I wouldn't say personality. I would say it has a nature. It has things that it does, and it has things that it doesn't do. And I would say that, for example, if that person it's a terrorist, you pretty much wouldn't ask it to do things that a terrorist that a Muslim terrorist wouldn't do. So it has to match with the ontological descriptions and the yeah, pretty much with the personality of the being at hand. So you cannot just have God to yeah, just pretty much do whatever you want, like printing. Okay, print money in front of me 10 times, or you cannot just make those arbitrary claims. You'll have to that'll have to be within the personality of this being that we're talking about.
So stayed for hours and met in person. Both of those are explained by bereavement delusion. You do have physical interactions with people who have died in bereavement delusion. They do stay for hours, and the appearance of the 500, like obviously Jesus probably didn't walk around and handshake 500 people. What most likely happened was they saw something like a bright light in the sky and interpreted that as Jesus. Far more plausible, especially since the account is just a sentence long. It doesn't tell us anything more than that in the Bible. So those are both perfectly well explained by bereavement delusion plus social conditioning. I'm not sure what you mean by I'm picking things individually here. So if I take all of those collectively, the appearance after the death, the physical interactions, and the appearance of the 500, all of that can be explained by bereavement delusion, social conditioning, exaggeration combined, all of those. So
Yeah,
what? Go ahead.
go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Fine, go ahead.
That's right. Yeah, what I'm saying is that you pretty much have to do pinhole thinking in order to explain those in a naturalistic perspective. So that's why I'm claiming that you have to make an inference to the best explanation.
What do you mean by pinhole thinking? Because that seems like the best explanation. Here are three things that are extremely common and that we know about that explain everything about that event. Why would that be pinhole thinking?
Because pretty much you have to do anything other than theism in order to explain your position. You pretty much have to do anything. Pretty much any explanation, like denying logic, denying philosophy, denying objective knowledge, denying the appearance of the uniformity of nature, denying you got to deny a lot of things in order to stick with atheism. And in this case, you have to argue that these people are having delusions in group, but delusions of sane people, of some of them being scholars, some of them not having any emotional connections to Jesus. So as I mentioned, some of them were the enemies of Jesus, as with Paul. Paul was not a friend of Jesus. He was actually killing Christians. So that would not explain all of its factors, and especially when it comes to enemies of the faith, because they wouldn't mourn for what they believe to be a false Messiah. So yeah, it doesn't account for enemies. It doesn't account for eating with Jesus. So some of them were eating for Jesus for hours, whatever. So those delusions that you're saying that they're just saying that they just pretty much saw a light on the sky, whatever. I think that would account for them giving their lives as martyrs, and as in the fourth fact, people wouldn't give. Yeah, pretty much they would have been martyrs for something they believe was false, so they must believe that it is true, and yeah, pretty much that I say that you got to do a lot of pinnacle thinking for that.
Yeah, so those are really easy to explain. Enemies of Jesus, Paul specifically, bereavement delusion applies to people who are emotionally significant. So if you were torturing, like if Nazis torturing Jews, they could see bereavement delusions of Yahweh, the Jewish God, because of they have such an emotionally significant thing interaction with them in their brain. So that's perfectly easy to understand why Paul would have a bereavement delusion of Jesus. Eating with Jesus, yes, that is explained by bereavement delusions. Also happens, common part of bereavement delusions. Enemies of Jesus, I would assume that would mean like in the 500 case. I don't know if any of the apostles were enemies of Jesus, but in the 500 case, where it was most likely something like we saw a light in the sky, there are people who are against UFOs who saw the same experience and interpreted it as a UFO. So enemies of UFOs also have these same experiences because of the social conditioning aspect. So that's also explained very easily. The martyrs thing, I agree that the apostles thought it was true, just like people who see bereavement delusions think it's true that they're seeing their dead loved ones. And so they would also potentially be willing to die because they believe they saw their dead loved one or whatever. All of those are explained by the three facts I mentioned of bereavement delusion, social condition, and exaggeration. I don't see how any of those are hard to explain given these three things.
Well, I would say that you cannot apply you wouldn't apply the same thing to other historical events, other events that we experience in our daily life. It seems that you mostly would apply that kind of delusion to a Christian God, in the sense that, for example, if someone was trying to prove that man went to the moon, you can pretty much say the same thing, that okay, yeah, we have those type of delusions, and people see things that they want to see, so then maybe these people just want to go to the moon, and and yeah, they just want to go to the moon, and they have these a lot of sentiment for this, so much that these people started having hallucinations to claim that they went to a moon. So I would say that that is what is the pinhole thinking that you got to do in order to stay to atheism, because you do not apply the same the same standards that to other things that you would apply to God. And yeah, pretty much. You just choose whatever you don't want to be proven. In this case, you can choose. Sorry about that. In this case, you can choose what is going to be. If someone went to the moon, you pretty much choose. Okay, I don't want to. I don't want any way to prove that someone went to the moon. So you can say that pretty much they hallucinated. You can say that that the what the writing is ambiguous, because you get scientists that don't agree with each other's sciences. You got people that don't agree with um, yeah. That pretty much they come to different conclusions when it comes to the aerodynamics, or the design of the spaceship, whatever. And let's say if we put it in a context in which let's say it was the first time of man going to the moon, or maybe someone going to the past and telling someone that they went to the moon. It'll be pretty much an extraordinary case, and pretty much just dismiss it. However, if it's the best explanation, if what you're saying makes sense, it should make sense that people can go to the moon. But you can apply the same logic, the same pinhole thinking to someone going to the moon as you're doing with the case of God.
So in my case, the principle I'm using is specifically the one used in law and history, which is that anything that lacks an empirical basis would require more than testimony to justify its existence. That would be miracles, magic, mythical creatures, the paranormal, supernatural, UFOs. None of those things are justified by testimony alone. You need some empirical basis. So if we had testimony from a book 2,000 years ago that a guy went to the moon, yeah, that would not be sufficient. Definitely everyone in history would reject that. That didn't happen. You would require a significant more amount of evidence to try to justify that belief. Pictures, videos, schematics for the rocket, plans on how they calculated all this stuff. Yeah, it's going to take a lot more than 4 facts about the rocket that to justify the belief that someone went to the moon. The evidence provided in the minimal facts approach does not come anywhere near the amount of evidence required in history or law to justify belief in a novel event that has no empirical basis. So this has nothing to do with my view or pinhole thinking. This is literally just the standard in history
Well,
and law that if you want to justify or indicate something that doesn't have an empirical basis, you need more than testimony. Like if someone said, I saw someone wave a magic wand and kill somebody with a yellow spark of magic, that would immediately be thrown out of a courtroom because there's no precedent for magic. And there's tons of court cases where this actually happens. If there's no empirical basis, then there's no precedent and it just isn't supported, no matter how many eyewitnesses you have.
okay, so you made a lot of points there, and of course I didn't interrupt you, and then I'll let you finish your case. So okay, one of the things you mentioned, empiricism, that we can only know some stuff based on empirical, in an empirical basis. So the problem is that that would never allow for anything beyond beyond the realm that we see in. However, if we argue, for example, that the first cause created the universe, the first cause must be outside of the universe. So if it's outside of the universe, empiricism and scientism will never be able to account for that data. So empiricism wouldn't necessarily exclude for for something outside of outside of the nature that we do observe. So it will be impossible actually to measure something outside of nature. It's very much well. I would say that you're using the wrong tool. I will be like saying I will never accept the existence of God until I can measure it with a ruler, or I can never know the color blue until I can measure it with a clock. It'll be a category fallacy to apply empiricism to a transcendent being and anything transcendent. So pretty much with that epistemology, you're pretty much forced to accept only natural things. But we know that whatever created the universe, whatever is outside of the universe, which we know there must be something outside of the universe, because it created the universe, then it cannot be, you cannot have empiricism as a basis. So, okay, with the other example that you mentioned, you were saying that that if it's history, okay, you will need to provide a lot of proof, like pictures, videos, schemes, present the math of it, present a model, whatever. But you can do the same type of skepticism if you don't want it to be true. You can say the pictures are you can say the pictures were photoshopped, or that someone made the pictures look like that, or the same with the videos. You can present schemes, but you can just pretty much play the skeptic and say, okay, just pretty much arbitrarily say that it wouldn't work when it comes to math. You would just argue, okay, math is a human convention. We couldn't be able to make any of those mathematical equations, and you pretty much can apply the same grounds of skepticism and pinhole thinking to someone going to the moon as you do with God, and that would be unfair. I would agree with that. Let's say if we went back in time somewhere before airplanes were made, you pretty much had a lot of reasons to think that something can fly, because you can see birds that pretty much have a body that can fly. So you can pretty much build a logical case that you can maybe make something that can fly. And you'll pretty much have to analyze every single step on a case by case basis, saying, okay, that kind of has the properties of a object that can probably fly. Okay, so maybe airplanes can maybe humans can make an airplane based on how it looks, pictures, videos, schemes, math, whatever. So one wouldn't have to be that much of a skeptic if sufficient evidence is provided to that person to believe that that objects that man can fly with a created object. So I would say you're not applying the same standard, but okay.
Well, how am
Yep.
I not applying the same standard? Because this is the exact same standard for all claims to knowledge. It would. I'm not an empiricist, so I don't know why you're bringing that up. My claim is that if you have something that, if you're arguing for something that doesn't have an empirical basis, you need novel testable prediction. So if you're arguing for a god, like let's say I believe in the god Magic Bob, and Magic Bob created the universe, and if I pray to Magic Bob, he gives me a gold brick, and I see a gold brick, that's evidence of Magic Bob. Like obviously, I don't have any empirical evidence of Magic Bob himself, but I can measure the consequences of what happens if Magic Bob exists. So you can use empirical things to indicate things that are non-empirical just fine. The supernatural could be indicated by this way, any kind of magic. So there's no problem with that whatsoever. And this standard again is the standard used in history and in neurology and in criminology. So I don't know why you think there's a double standard here.
Well, again, we already talked about the character that again you're saying that okay, Bob can make gold bricks. Therefore, I'm not going to believe that Bob can make that Bob exists until Bob can make gold bricks. But what if Bob cannot make gold bricks? And it's the same example that I try to portray with the Muslim example. So I think we're going a little bit back in circles. So if God,
Well, I just want to clarify. My point there wasn't that I won't believe in God until he makes gold bricks. The point was that using empirical evidence, you can indicate things that are non-empirical. So this wasn't specifically about the nature of Bob. This was just saying that if there is a being named Bob, and I predict he will make gold bricks, that would be evidence of a non-empirical Bob. So it wasn't specifically about his nature.
Sure. Well, you can make the same case for God that okay, if God exists and God has the character that we observe in the Bible, that means that, for example, things Jesus appearing to thousands of Muslims in the Middle East in dreams in different forms would happen, even though many of them don't know about Jesus. They wouldn't know not even about Christianity, since it's pretty penalized over there. So you would expect those things to happen. You would expect near-death experiences, because the Bible tells about an afterlife, as you would expect people to experience near-death experiences. And if you claim, okay, well, we don't know how. We don't know about all near-death experiences because they can be if they don't happen to everybody. Well, because God has a character, it's not going to happen to everybody. That's what I'm saying with the gold brick. It's the same thing with the gold brick. So since the God has a character, it wouldn't. Not everybody is going to have a near-death experience. Since, for example, with the Christian theology, you see that when people die in the they go to a place called Sheol, which is a place of the death. So people wouldn't be able to experience anything after. So some people wouldn't be able to experience near-death experiences, while some others would, depending on the theological case. I'm not saying that people will automatically go to Sheol, or I'm not arguing what Sheol is. All I'm saying is that God has a character, and it would only prove things based on that character. So near-death experiences will not happen to everybody, and also just appearing to Muslims is not going to happen to everybody. Jesus working with the lives of Chinese people or any other people in different countries, and millions of people. Pretty much testifying for a Christian experience. You will see that many people will experience that, as we know, that God elects some, which would be the doctrine of predestination or election. So God will elect many people. So you would observe that mostly elect people would observe those types of of things of characters of God and Jesus. So you would expect some things to happen, and you would expect some things not to happen. That is my case pretty much.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I totally agree. You would have to know what God's nature is to know what to expect to see. But my argument was that is using empirical evidence, you can indicate non-empirical things, like whatever created the universe or supernatural, whatever. If you just know if these non-empirical things exist and will interact in the world in some way, and you can measure that interaction, then you can use empirical evidence to indicate these non-empirical things. So do you agree that using empirical evidence, you can indicate non-empirical things?
Well, what do you said?
So my argument was is that you can use empirical evidence to indicate things that are not empirical, like the thing that created the universe. Obviously, it's not in the universe, so we can't measure it in the universe. Or supernatural ghosts that aren't empirical, we may not be able to measure them empirically. But if we know something about them, like this, you can talk to this ghost if you chant some kind of Hare Krishna mantra. Then, if the ghost will tell you the location of buried treasure or whatever at a reliable basis, you can use that empirical evidence of discovering the buried treasure as evidence of the ghost. Like if you could do that at a higher rate than chance, we could call a ghost from the afterlife and it could tell us the location of buried treasure at a high rate. That would be good evidence of ghosts, of non-empirical things. So you can use empirical evidence of finding buried treasure as evidence of a non-empirical thing, a ghost.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Actually, so it'll be the same thing. So if God has a character that is explained by the Bible, that is why I you pretty much see the occurrence of the death and resurrection of Jesus in time. That's why you see postmortem. People saw postmortem appearances. That's why people have visions of Jesus. That's why there's near-death experiences, and that's why we can observe all these other things that can that can better be explained by God than a natural basis. So, in the same manner that you're saying that that is what we would expect from these other from these other supernaturalistic things to act in the world in order to identify them. We see all these things that we can identify God. Yeah, from the things we experience in the world as some there are some incredible miracles that happen nowadays. For example, I could tell you a miracle, for example, of a he's a very close family member. So he got an accident in which all his organs were crushed by a lot of tons. I don't know how many tons. I think 20 tons or so. And the three doctors pronounced him that he was going to die. You see also a lot of you also have the evidence from all the court cases from which he experienced. You also have all the medical records from all the medical years and years of medical attention that he received. And you also see, for example, the um, medical attention. Yeah, when it comes to court cases, you have 62 recorded cases for his for his miracle. So you see a lot of things, and you also have within all this, you
What was the
have
miracle?
he got crushed by tons and tons of yeah, he got run by a very heavy trailer.
And then healed or something? The healing part is the miracle?
Yeah, pretty much after those years, he became one of the best workers in a very physically demanding job. And yeah, pretty much all of his doctors couldn't explain any of his circumstances. So I would say that and since there was a lot of Christian involvement, a lot of Christian yeah, since they are Christians, they believe in God, they would pray to God, they would have people pray for them, and they would have all these Christian circumstances that you expect when a Christian miracle would occur. And you see all this evidence that points to one thing. You would have to do pinhole thinking in order to say that the miracle didn't happen. You would pretty much have to appeal to whatever smaller whatever is the smallest possibility, just that it's not a miracle. It's the same thing that you have to do with him, as you have to do with Jesus, as you have to do with God, as I'm arguing that that one can do the same thing for claiming that men did not go to the moon. So I
So if
think.
some so if something happened that would explain that and happens at a much higher rate than miracle, would that be pinhole thinking to say that that thing that happens at a much higher rate and explains exactly that thing is, would that be pinhole thinking?
Well, there's things that do not happen at a higher rate. There's things that we just have observed once, like let's say the picture of the black hole. We just have a picture of one picture of a black hole, and that's it. And we struggle pretty much to get it. So you can do the same pinhole thinking, and even though it wouldn't repeat itself or some in a long time, or maybe in something that, let's say something else that wouldn't repeat in a lifetime, or would appear in 300 years, whatever. It will be something that does not repeat itself pretty often. But I would still say that if it is the best explanation that something is going to happen, then we can apply the same thing that with God. That if it's the best explanation that that pretty much that God exists, or that Christianity is true, etc. So I think it's pinhole thinking. But
So you said
um,
pinhole thinking is picking like the least likely thing or something like that, right?
I would say it kind of refers to, if you look at a pinhole, you can have a lot of ways to go around through the world, but it'll be extremely something, a very precise exit that you pretty much are forced to take. So
Right, right. The precise exit that you're forced to take, that part is the part I'm talking about here.
yeah, just to pretty much deny whatever. Pretty much to deny whatever you're trying to go against. And that is why, for example, something so obvious for us, like that man can go to the moon, you can make the same pinhole thinking, just bring objections and upon objections of every single thing, like the math, like pictures, videos, eyewitness testimony. And let's say when it first happened, it wasn't something very repeatable. And when it comes to Christianity, yes, like the death and resurrection of Jesus, it's not that repeatable, because it will be pointless, because of the purpose of why Jesus was crucified in the first place. Like the purpose of the gospel, pretty much, it wouldn't be repeatable, but you would see repeatable patterns, like near-death experiences, and you would see the apparitions of Jesus to many people, and people experiencing miracles. So I think that's what you're missing.
So pinhole thinking is not, if there's something that happens that explains the event a lot, like we see somebody's body being run over by a car, that's best explained by them being run over by a car. That's not pinhole thinking. That's the most likely thing to have occurred, right?
Refers to a best explanation. Whatever best explains the evidence, that is or whatever we have to go with.
Right, and that's the opposite of pinhole thinking, right?
Yeah, inference to the best explanation will be the opposite of pinhole thinking.
Okay,
And
so
just one thing, we've been almost 2 hours, so
yeah,
yes, we can
wrap up pretty
maybe
soon.
a little bit and we close it. But
Sure. So yeah, so every one of my examples was inference to the best explanation. None of it was pinhole thinking. In the case of Jesus' resurrection, all of those things I listed, like bereavement delusion, happens to 60% of people. That's hugely probable. Social conditioning happens to a lot of people. It's hugely probable. All of the things I listed are the most probable thing to occur, like seeing a car run over a person. It was probably a car. The example you mentioned with your brother, like obviously I don't know anything about that case. You just told it to me, but spontaneous remission or spontaneous healings are extremely common in even extremely severe cases. And they happen in all religions. So that would, if it had only happened in the case of Christianity, yeah, that'd be great evidence for sure. But it doesn't. It happens at the exact same rates in every culture, everywhere around the world, which means it's most likely just a biological thing. So all of these examples I listed are the most plausible explanations, which is why they're accepted by the majority of scholars in the field. None of them are pinhole thinking. None of these are extraneous, hard to explain things. These are really common things that happened all over the world all the time. So I don't know why you're calling it pinhole thinking. But yeah, we should definitely wrap up pretty soon. After you wanted to give a closing, go ahead.
Sure, yeah. So one of the things when it comes to when you said improbable, um, Well, something again, as we mentioned before, not because something is improbable doesn't mean that something is the best explanation. That was the whole point. That something improbable, something improbable can be true as the same way that going to the moon is very improbable, but we know that it is true. And you also say that all religions have some sort of miraculous things happening. So in the Christian worldview, that's exactly what you would expect. You would expect true miracles, you would expect false miracles, and you would expect miracles by other religions also. Since, for example, in the Christian worldview, you will see that some other religions are deceived by Satan or deceived by demons, deceived, for example, like when it comes to Muhammad had allegedly a revelation by the angel Gabriel. So you, for example, have the verse which it says that even if an angel appeared to you and showed you a gospel different from what I've sent unto you, may be anathema, which means that people are going to get revelations from angels and claim that, yeah, pretty much base their religion on something miraculous. So the Christian worldview would actually we would expect of some of the things miraculous happening for other religions, and we also would expect some false miracles to be happening in other places. The same way that when it comes to money, um, you wouldn't say that there's a lot of fake money, fake dollar bills out there. Therefore, there's no since there's a lot of fake ones, then you cannot say that the one is actually true. But you actually observe that you wouldn't be able to say that since many can be actual bills, and while others could be fake bills. So that wouldn't prove anything at all. So, well, okay. So when it comes to the closing, um, yeah, I guess that's all I have to do. All I have to say that I still think it's pinhole thinking, and I don't think that you would apply the same standards to anything like, for example, the moon landing, the same way that you apply it to God. So I still think it's pinhole thinking. And if we see the conclusions that you've drawn so far, you have claimed that logic is a human convention, and the underlying factors of based on logic, um, those are also yeah, pretty much you will call it reality, but you will have to take a lot of things as axioms, but not explaining how a non-God hypothesis can explain those axioms in the first place. And what else with the results of Christianity? I guess it was too vague. That's why I didn't give it like a much of a importance. But we didn't talk about the topics I wanted to talk about. But okay, yeah, I guess it was too vague. It was a little bit too big in my part. So I apologize for making it like so many statements there that we can go through in history, economy, and a lot of places. So yeah, these are my conclusions. That's my closing statement. Yeah, that's it.
Cool. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate you taking the time to have a conversation with me. I enjoyed it a lot. Love to have you on again sometime. And if you want to retell everybody where they can find you on your YouTube channel and stuff, that'd be great.
Sure. Well, you can find me on YouTube as Wisdom Media. We also have a Spanish brand, which is Wisdom Media Español. You can find us on Facebook. We post memes, some a lot of memes, mostly meme more than apologetics. But we also do live streams either in YouTube and also on Facebook. And yeah, also yeah, like we have a chat on with Eric Hernandez on predeterminism and free will. I defend predeterminism as a Calvinist, and yeah, you can see all of our videos in Wisdom Media. I guess I'll give the link to Tom, so you guys can so you can post it, so you guys can check it out. And Tom, thank you so much for this discussion. It was fun. It was entertaining, and yeah, I guess thank you for the invitation, man.
Yep. Thanks again. Great having you on. I'm going to go get some dinner and I'll talk to you later.
Cool, man. Enjoy your dinner and have a good one, man.